Hey everybody, Frank Finance here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to be talking about behavioral finance. I like to think of it when psychology meets your money. So before we get started, please consider hitting subscribe, like the video, and click the notifications bell so you get notified anytime I post a new video. So with that being said, let's jump into it. So what is behavioral finance? Well, it's the assertion that individuals do not act rationally, but often make decisions based off cognitive biases and other emotions. Behavioral finance is another tool we have to examine the market, price swings, overreactions, and possibly find opportunities. Behavioral finance is a large subject. Today I'm going to skim the surface and go over 5 behaviors. Today we're going to talk about familiarity bias. We're going to talk about overconfidence/ego. We're going to talk about loss aversion, regret aversion, and hurting. Behavior number 1, familiarity bias. Now, it's the preference to remain confined to what is familiar. Now, we all experience familiarity bias throughout the day. Now, it could be going the same route to work, could be ordering the same dishes at a restaurant, eating the same food week to week, going to the same shopping centers, wearing the same clothes. It's natural and it's normal for people to be attracted to what they're familiar with. Now, in investing, that could materialize as I own an iPhone, so I buy Apple. I eat at IHOP, so I buy IHOP. I shop at Walmart, so I buy Walmart. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these companies individually, but again, the reason why one might choose to buy this isn't because of the underlying investment value. It might just be because of the familiarity they have with the brand. Now, what are some of the ways you can combat familiarity bias? Well, number 1 is to evaluate your motive. Did you buy the investment because you were familiar with the brand, you worked for the company? Those might be examples of a bad reason to make the investment. So a good reason might be you examined the underlying investment, you looked at the return potential, the risk profile, how it weighed up into your overall diversification in your portfolio, and everything checked off, and so you decided to make that investment. That would be a good motive. Now, number 2 is a periodic review of your portfolio for diversification and your risk profile. So as your portfolio grows, as the market changes, your weight in certain securities and certain assets could shift. So you want to evaluate those periodically to make sure that everything's still in line with your overall goals. Now, number 3 is to expand your knowledge base and learn. Now, one of the reasons why I love doing this channel is because I can help folks grow and learn more about investing and saving. Now, one of the reasons why this helps with familiarity bias, because when you grow and you learn more, you can help those things you become familiar with and leverage them to make good investments. Behavior number 2, overconfidence bias. Well, this is the tendency to hold a false or misleading assessment of your own skills, intellect, or talent. This can take shape in many ways. I'm going to discuss 4. Number 1 is overranking. So this is essentially believing your skills to be better than that of the average. This can lead to someone taking a higher risk investment as compared to what they should because of that overconfidence. Illusion of control. This believes that they have control over things that they don't. Again, back to that overconfidence, they believe that they know more or can do more than most people. Timing optimism. This is where people underestimate how long it will take to hold an investment before they get the return that they're expecting. The desirability effect, or in other words, wishful thinking, is when people, because they believe something will happen, they overestimate the probability of that happening, and so they move forward with that investment based off of a notion that is misplaced. So how do you overcome an overconfidence bias? Well, the first thing I would do is think of the risk involved in the investment. Typically, you want to think about your risk capacity as well as your risk tolerance before making an investing decision, and make sure you have a good reason to make that investment. And it's not just because you believe that you know something or your ability is better than that of the average. The second one is challenge yourself. And what I mean by this is play at devil's advocate. So when you make an investment, ask the questions, challenge yourself to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Now, I don't mean analysis by paralysis. Don't get caught up too much in making sure that it's always the perfect decision. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But you definitely need to check yourself when you're making an investment to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Now, the third one is reflect on your mistakes. Now, we learn so much by all the mistakes that we make. I work in project management, and after every project, we do a thing called the lessons learned. We go back, we review what we did right, we review what we did wrong, and we use those things to improve upon our future projects. In this case, you can apply it to investments. Look at what you've done right, look at what you've done wrong, and apply that to future decision making to allow yourself to make better decisions in the future. And the fourth one is just accept feedback. Typically, you can work with others, you can float ideas off of other people, but always make an investment because you believe in it and it's the best decision for your portfolio in your particular situation. Don't just blindly listen to people and follow whatever they're going to say. You can accept their feedback, but always consider your own personal situation before you move forward. Behavior number 3, loss aversion. Loss aversion is a theory that when an individual is presented with two choices, both being equal, so the same investment, but when it's framed as one in the terms of potential gain and the other in potential loss, the individual will choose the one that will have the gain in order to avoid the loss. Now, there's lots of studies out there that show that losses are more powerful than psychologically than when someone makes a gain. So simply put, the feeling of a loss, the pain of a loss, is greater than that of the pleasure someone would experience from a gain. Here's a quote about loss aversion from the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Now, one of the things I really like about loss aversion is that it helps folks manage their risk profiles. Now, risk management is, I can do a whole video on risk management, but it definitely can be that self-check on someone to say, am I making this investment and does the risk that I'm assuming make sense for my portfolio? Now, it can be used against you more from a marketing type way. So, for example, if you go out and buy or lease a new car, you could be paying $500 a month, maybe even more depending on the brand, and how new it is, right? But you go out and get a $500 car. It's going to be very difficult for you to lose that car, for example, if it just doesn't make sense financially for you. So you could look at the end of the month and say, man, this car payment is killing me, but it would be a stronger loss to you to actually lose the feeling of having the car than the gain of having extra money around every month. Behavior number 4, regret aversion. This occurs when a decision is made to avoid regretting an alternative decision in the future. In other words, investors naturally wish to avoid regrets over decisions. People sometimes think less about making a good decision and more about avoiding a bad one. So what are some of the ways that regret aversion plays out in investing? Well, one, it could be that you have a fear of making the wrong investment, or you might have identified the right investment and then you're fearful of some outcome from that. Another way this can play out is a thing called fear of missing out. You may see some people doing very well on a particular security. You may chase after that because it's not necessarily because you believe in the investment. It's because you don't want to miss out on that gain. So with most of these behaviors, there's good and bad. So some of the positives is this can also be a good risk mitigation strategy. Now, again, you have to avoid risk aversion or total risk aversion. And then on the negative side, again, it can cause you to either make actions that are negative, like in fear of missing out, or it could cause you actions that are negative by deciding not to make an investment. Behavior number 5, herding. I'm sure you've heard of herd mentality. I'm sure you've heard of following others. This is simply just that. It's when investors, instead of making their own decisions on investments, they just go after what others are doing. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with herding. What becomes problematic is when you follow others into an investment without understanding why, and then something bad happens. This could cause an investor to just totally stop investing altogether. I got burned once, I'm never doing it again. I've heard that many, many times, and it's just unfortunate. What you really rather should do is when someone makes a suggestion, you see several people doing something familiar, you should say, what is the merit of the argument behind what they're doing? And that'll help inform you on what decision you should make, whether you should follow or whether you should stay far away from it. One of the asset classes that I advocate for all the time is low-cost index funds. Now, this could be mutual funds, they could be ETFs. Irregardless of what you choose, this allows you to use herding as your advantage. Instead of actively trading and trying to make all the right investments perform above the market, what this allows you to do is invest at the market. You'll do no better than the market, but you won't do worse than what the market performs. I think this is a great way to use herding to your advantage. The reason why this investing strategy is so powerful is because it allows novice investors to get active in the market, but not have to worry about making all the right decisions. Well, there you have it, folks. There's 5 behavioral finance behaviors. Let me know down in the comments if you've suffered from any of these or if you could apply this to your everyday life. I'd love to get some feedback on that. Please consider subscribing if you already haven't. Like the video, that helps me out a ton. Thank you so much for joining me today. Frank Finance out.